So, my name is Stephen Bell. I'm a proud member of the Lumbee tribe, and I serve as the American Indian Education Coordinator with Guilford County Schools. I am the son of Ronnie and Natalie Bell, and I'm the grandson of Mr. Buddy and Miss Sarah Bell of Pembroke and Mr. Mack and Mary Lou Priest of Randolph County. Because Native youth are our future, and because education is a value that my family has passed on to me. It's really tough to draw a line between GCS work and personal work, because to me this is both a life work and it's also what I get paid to do as well. It's something that before I was in this position, I was volunteering with the Indian Ed program. I was educating the schools that I was working in about Native history. And so it's tough to sort of draw the line there. One thing that is unique about Greensboro is the diversity that exists within Native communities here in the Guilford County area. In Guilford County schools, we have over 750 Native students across our schools, and they represent over 30 different tribes and nations. And so when you think back to your history classes, the US government signed treaties with France and Germany and Canada and all these different nations, but they also signed treaties with different Native tribes as well. And so just like France and Germany have different cultures, different food, different ways of being, Native tribes are the same way. They have different languages. They have different ways of interacting. There's definitely some similarities across tribes, but there's also some differences. And so here in Greensboro, it's important to remember that we have a lot of rich Native history that is diverse and that it is very strong and enforces the fact that we're still here and we don't all look the same. Our Indian Ed program with Guilford County Schools, we're on social media, and you're welcome to give us a follow or give us a like to learn about different events that are happening, to learn about awareness days, to learn about Native history that you didn't get growing up. So that's the Indian Ed for Guilford County Schools. To learn about specific issues, there's a lot of great organizations that are centered in Indigenous sovereignty that are focused on elevating these issues. For example, with our missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and people, the Red Justice Project has been a great podcast that has elevated this issue to so many people, as well as MMIWNC, who's doing a lot of advocacy work in North Carolina for our missing and murdered. If you're not familiar with that, I definitely encourage you to give them a listen. There's also really great Native authors that are helping us educate our teachers and staff in Guilford County Schools. We've used We're Still Here by Tracy Sorrell. We've also used Indigenous Peoples' History of the U.S. by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. I grew up in a system that has erased Native history and Native culture. And so recognizing that there's a lot that we have to learn. There's a lot that I'm still learning as well, having grown up in an education system. But that first step is that the education piece. And once you have an understanding and awareness of Native people, of Native culture, then invite us to the table, invite us to your offices. Don't speak for us, invite us to those opportunities to give presentations, to read in your classrooms, to do presentations that are not just, we want you to come and dance for us. We're professionals, we're parents, we're educators, we're in all of these different systems, but because the system has so often erased us, it's sometimes harder to know that you are interacting with Native people.
My name is Sky Kaiwamani. I am Tuscarora, and I'm also Onondaga descended and kinship connected to the Halawasaponi tribe. I'm an undergraduate student at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where I'm a senior studying biology, and I research in neurobiology. I'm hoping to go on to an MD PhD after UNCG, and I've had the great privilege of serving as president of the Native American Student Association at UNCG for the last 3 years. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. I said yes to this opportunity because I think it's important for us as Native people, especially here in the Southeast, where I think a lot of people have a perception of Native people as only really existing in the past tense. So I think it's really important for us to have representation and have voices, and especially diverse voices, to sort of talk about what it's like to be an Indigenous person in a contemporary sense, and especially from a community in a space that has sort of erased in many ways the Indigenous populations that do exist here. Rural ways to be an Indigenous person. There's no one way to be an Indigenous person. You know, there are people who are enrolled, there are people who are unenrolled, there are people who are ineligible for enrollment but are very much accepted within our communities. And so I think I would just say that if you have a preconception about what it means to be an Indigenous person, it's probably wrong. Literature has a really interesting place in my life because I did not grow up in the Western education system. So my parents raised me very much like off the grid, quote unquote. My father, for different reasons than my mother, but it sort of coalesced. And so I didn't actually have much exposure to reading or the process of like acquiring knowledge through the skill of reading until I was quite old. I think like 14 was the first time I read an actual book, cover to cover. And so I think, and I've spoken to other Native people, and it seems to be true for them too, that reading is not our primary mode of connecting with stories. I think we prefer oral stories, and so sometimes it can be difficult to sit down and read. But I also think that literature has provided such a wealth of knowledge for me. I think specifically when you asked that question, what came to mind was my review of Indigenous literature. So decolonial theorists from Indigenous communities globally who write scholarly research about Indigenous pedagogies and decolonial theory has been really important and transformative for me in my life. And then pivoting to There, I think There is just a wonderful story and sort of collection of stories, because I think it really is emblematic of the plural ways of indigeneity, and that there are so many ways that people come into the world as an Indigenous person, and there are so many levels of connection and disconnection, and the nuances of how even within a single family people can be removed or educated or not educated in terms of their upbringing within an Indigenous understanding and worldview.
Yes, my name is Simone. I'm Eastern Band Cherokee. I live in North Carolina and currently I'm in Greensboro for university. I've lived in North Carolina my entire life. I'm a nutrition student and I'm really enjoying that. I do a lot of speaking engagements about culture, educating our faculty and staff at my university, and I currently serve as the vice president for our Native organization on campus. Nutrition major, one of the things that I really think of is food. So 60% of food in grocery stores now come from our grandmother's fields. They're native foods. So we get the question sometimes of what do we eat? Well, it's like you all non-natives eat a lot of the things that we ate and that we continue to eat and that we continue to grow. So things like collards, different varieties of potatoes, grits, gumbo, any sort of corn, squash, beans, those sorts of things, turnip greens, berries, and so forth, different sort of nut and seed varieties. those are all native foods that are local here to the Southeast. And so, yeah, that's where I really see the intersectionality the most. That, and then also our folk medicine practice, our Southern folk medicine, and that kind of, I guess, weaving that sort of part from Southeastern woodland cultures. So that's what three of the things that have helped me have been community, like I said, being able to connect with students from various tribes and understanding that my experiences as a Native person are not like this offset to whiteness. And they're not, peculiar experiences or something, that needs a separate office. Like, they're just human experiences. So being able to connect with others like me has been really fulfilling on multiple levels. Of course, continuing to sometimes teach or personally engage with in our foodways has been nourishing for me, as I'm able to, keep that cultural continuance that, like I said, my family has done as far back as I know. And then, of course, regalia, investing in beadwork that helps me to tell my family story and my own stories. That has been amazing, and I think worth every penny. Raised in community, being raised by my own elders, and my family, and the knowledge that we have inherited as Indigenous folks and as Black folks. I think I really miss that connection to land. So one of the books that has really helped with that has been Braiding Sweetgrass by Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. She studies in Potawatomi, and she just goes and collects these beautiful stories from different Indigenous communities on the East Coast, and they're extremely helpful to make sure that I am not so far off into, I guess, the science and what Western civilization and Western education systems tell me is important when I'm relating to food. It's my personal opinion that I can't remove my love for people and my love for the land away from nutrition. Those things really just go hand in hand, and I don't really see that at my university. So being able to connect with some of that traditional wisdom, continue, of course, to connect with, my relatives, and so that book has been really great. I would also say The Way of Right Relationship by Michael T. Garrett has been great, just looking at some of those Cherokee values and then also storytelling. Cherokee Health and Resiliency. So the name of the book is Under the Rattlesnake, Cherokee Health and Resiliency. That one has also been great as far as like my career and helping me to understand better the things and the interest and experiences for tribal Native folks, people that still live within their tribal communities, because there are plenty there.
Who is Terry? So I am a member of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. I should probably say first, my name is Terry Chavis. I use he, him, his pronouns. Member of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. Born and raised in Pembroke. And I went off to college at Mars Hill University. Was a biochemistry major. Graduated, got my master's in education for student affairs. Then went to Kentucky 3 years. Worked in res life, and then moved back here to North Carolina about 1.5 years ago. So that's been my professional journey. But me as a person, I'm an authentic person. I am unapologetically authentic, trying to live my best life or as best of a life as I can every day. I will speak through the lens of my people, specifically the Lumbee tribe. When we meet someone for the first time, usually what we'll ask is, who's your people? And that's a way for us to build a connection with that person, to see if we have any family connections. Oh, my grandma is this person, grew up on this side of town, all of that. And we start to build those links together, that relationship, to see, are we kin? Are we cousins? My cousins. And so that's kinship to us. There was a book that our knowledge community was reading called Power in Place. And it was a phenomenal book. It talked about essentially Indian education within the field of education and how it has been threatened for centuries. And one of the chapters in the book, it really hit me at my core. And it talked about the difference in Indigenous worldview versus colonized Western worldview. And the author, Dr. Wildcat, summed it up pretty well, where he said this indigenous worldview is like a sphere. We're all connected in some way, shape, or form, and it's not just us as humans, but the plants, the animals, the waters, the elements that we're all in society together. We're all in nature together. We're all connected, and we all play our part in some way, shape, or form. And our main goal is the continuation of the world of nature. Whereas when you look at this colonized Western view, it's this hierarchy, this pyramid where humans are on the top of the food chain, and everything we do is individualistic and utilitarian like. And when we often see those food chains or food webs, we see humans are up there where we don't have any natural predators, and we kind of just own whatever we want because of our intellectual capabilities. And so reading that chapter and discussing that with scholars in the knowledge community, it really, really changed the way that I view the world, how I go through